Hello, my name is Justin McClure, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're following up the original with something just as good. Yeah, that's right, we're doing an episode on sequels.
Boy, Justin, it's the summer. It was 27 degrees Celsius today. Nothing like getting out of the heat, going into a nice air-conditioned auditorium, popping some corn, you got your brewski or
I don't want
cola.
to think. That's why I'm going to watch a sequel, which is just pure entertainment. You roll Godfather 2 and let me enjoy it.
Big blockbuster, the sequel to a movie that you love. Favorite characters back. The Hangover boys are here. And
Oh, man. It's
adventure.
Independence Day once more. Resurgence.
Oh, man. Another trip to Jurassic World.
Yep. Hey, Jurassic Park 3 is the best of the sequels, but that's for our episode on... What is that?
Jurassic Park, Joe Johnston?
Yeah, our Joe Johnston episode. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about sequels. Much maligned, known as just pure exploitation. And we watched 3 for this episode.
First of all, that's an antiquated notion because, of course, there was a time in the 70s, movies like The French Connection 2, The Sting 2, movies that were just cash grabs. And,
I prefer John Frankenheimer's French Connection 2 to William Friedkin's.
And it was just, an assumption that the sequel is never as good as the original. It just repeats the formula. And isn't that the problem with Hollywood? There are no original ideas anymore. It's just sequels.
Wait, where are you getting at? That sequels are good now?
Well, what I'm getting at is we evolved past sequels and now we have cinematic universes.
Yeah,
there are no sequels anymore.
They try, but most of the time you're right. They're setting up, hopefully, a franchise. While most of the films that we're talking about today are sequels because the first film made money, they never thought the story would continue, and they went, oh, okay, we could, there's an IP here we can make money on. Bring in that dough.
Now, as you said, we watched 3 movies this week, and there was a methodology to the selection here.
I suggested we watch Exorcist II, that being a kind of reinvention of what the first one is. John Boorman, who made the picture, didn't want to try to tap in again to what made the first one successful.
Totally different. Mm-hmm. Another movie that we watched this week, which we'll get to, is Return to Oz from 1985, which is an inversion of the first one. Not a complete repudiation.
Yeah, you could almost talk about it as a long gap sequel, but there's a lot of elements that go into how it got created that actually doesn't make it that, mostly because it's completely different studios and they didn't have the rights to the original that people know and love. And finally, we watched Jaws 2 because we had to watch a movie that was a literal ripoff of the first one. But before we get to those, when you think sequel, what's your favorite one, Will? Because I know what your favorite one is.
I don't know. What is my favorite one?
Batman Returns.
Oh, yeah, that is my favorite sequel. I love that movie.
Can you guess my favorite sequel? Come on.
Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, you know it. And that's... an indication that people always use of like, oh, well, sequels are not all bad. No, they're not. Just like not all remakes are bad. You got your Flies, you got your Things, you got your Blobs. But most remakes are bad, just like most sequels are bad.
So, Exorcist II, The Heretic from 1977, coming 4 years after the William Friedkin original. This one directed by John Boorman of Deliverance and Zardoz.
So, I heard that they offered the original Exorcist to John Boorman. That's how hot he was at the time. And he turned it down because he said, I'm not interested in films about evil, and I don't want to make a film that essentially seems to be torturing a girl the entire running time. He was not wrong on either count, but then why you would go see him to make the sequel when he doesn't like the things that people reacted to about the original is odd.
This movie, it wasn't a complete financial disaster, but it was a big financial disappointment and was at the time considered one of the worst movies ever made. Mm-hmm. So much so that in the Medved Brothers book, the Golden Turkey Awards, it was voted number 2.
Wow.
Worst film of all time.
Under Plan 9 from Outer Space?
Under Plan 9 from Outer Space.
So had you seen Exorcist the Heretic before? I believe I had. I remembered nothing about it.
Yeah, I saw it in high school, and I watched it again this week, and it was very much as I remembered it. Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoyed it quite a bit until I was like, ah, man, it's kind of overplaying its welcome. I should have watched the other edit where John Boorman went in a week after the film was in theaters and cut out something like 25 minutes on every print.
Fuck, man, I wish I'd watched that instead of the 117-minute version. But the plot of this film, Regan, played once again by Linda Blair, She's in college now, or it's college, right? She's studying dance in New York.
She's an adult at this point.
Basically, a young adult. She remembers nothing of the possession of 4 years ago.
Or does she?
Perhaps her memories are suppressed because she's having bad dreams, she's sleepwalking, she's almost falling off buildings. So Max von Sydow is dead, although he cleverly appears in a flashback sequence.
Yep.
So they get his protege, Richard Burton, playing Father Lamont, who discovers that she's possessed by a demon called Pazuzu, who is an African demon. And working with Louise Fletcher as the doctor who treats her, Louise Fletcher has this weird hypnosis, brainwave synchronizing technology, which she attaches to Linda Blair, and it
creates another dimension. You're on a different space that you could... And when I first heard the premise for Exorcist II, I was like, oh man, that sounds great. They go to like some alternate like dreamscape reality. No, not really.
Well, they make a connection with James Earl Jones, who is an African scientist who was possessed by Pazuzu as a child. You do hear the word Pazuzu a lot in the film.
Laugh every time you hear it. An actual demon from Babylonian times.
And it is pretty much the opposite of the first Exorcist movie. The first one is that William Friedkin style. It's gritty. It's got that, docu-realist thing. The second one is going for something dreamlike, like an Italian horror movie.
It's essentially an Italian ripoff of the Exorcist film, The Visitor, if you will.
The first one is streamlined and efficient, but this one has a very complicated mythology where you get to, the demon is kind of mysterious in the first one, but in this one you learn all about it.
I mean, if you're making a sequel to The Exorcist and you're going, all right, I want to kind of tap into what people liked about the first one. What did they react to? It's pretty obvious that it's, in that sense, kind of like a middle-class living being destroyed by a force that you do not understand, and this innocent child that you've seen day in, day out is someone completely different.
And she's doing horrible things. Mm-hmm. She's defiling her own body, basically, her pure, innocent body with this horrible demon.
And John Boorman threw all of that out the window, and nothing in The Exorcist II Heretic is grounded. From the get-go, you're in this, research lab that is all reflective surfaces. It looks like a maze of some kind. Uh-huh. And you never get, an everyday sense. So it just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, in the first movie, you're really looking at the demon from outside. It's a cold, it's lazy to call it documentary-like, but it's an objective view of the demon. Whereas in this one, you're strapped into this brainwave machine and you're traveling
around the world. Yeah, with Ned Beatty.
And you're looking at James Earl Jones in a bee costume.
Yeah,
and it's
right.
A kooky dreamscape, and it's not scary.
No, it is definitely not scary. But I can see what John Boorman is doing. In the long version, he wants to almost lull the audience into a form of hypnotism. That's why it's a light flashing on and off that the viewer is forced to stare at for seemingly 30 minutes at times.
It is a bit of a boring movie.
Yes, it is. For all of its extravagance, and I really enjoy the weird MGM backlot to a lot of the sequences, because they never left the country, so all the African scenes are shot in Hollywood, USA, and that would explain why Martin Scorsese likes the movie so much.
Well, Martin Scorsese had it on his film comment Guilty Pleasures list, where he wrote a rather beautiful blurb that I still don't quite understand, I have to admit. He says something like, it's like the book of Job, can pure goodness invite upon itself pure evil?
Because, at the end, the whole central conceit of the film is that there's a race of mutants, let's call them X-Men, that are being created by God to fight off the demons. And the reason that these X-Men are being possessed by the demons is because they are pure goodness. As the opening exorcism goes, the woman who's possessed by the demon catches fire. She goes, "Why am I possessed? I'm a healer." And that's because the demons are attracted to this next level of evolution. And, at the end of the film, Linda Blair's powers is to wave her arm in the air like this, which makes all the locusts go away. You know what? You'd be terrified of this film if you're scared of locusts.
Yeah, it's got good scenes.
Yep.
Locust scene is good.
Yeah. Not exciting, not really scary.
But it looks good. Mm-hmm. I agree with Pauline Kael that it looks good.
there's nothing to grasp onto.
And it's boring.
It is pretty boring.
I would like to see the shorter version.
Even the climax with, like, the whole Exorcist house, like, bursting and falling apart, you're kind of like, ugh, because there's nothing to grasp onto. You don't even really know what's going on. I listened to a commentary by a fan that's on the Scream Factory Blu-ray, and he's like, oh yeah, you gotta understand here that they're actually in an alternate dimension where people can't see what's going on, which is why they're not reacting. I'm like, well, the movie doesn't clarify that in any way. You're just completely lost as to what's going on, and because you're so unmoored, there's nothing even disconcerting about what you're seeing.
So, nice try. That's what I say.
Nice try.
Not one of the worst movies ever made.
No, it's a complete misunderstanding of the material that they're sequelizing. But
well, it's an attempt to do something different.
Yeah, an extrapolation, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's never going to please anybody who enjoyed the first Exorcist film.
Oh, and Linda Blair is a cipher.
She's not good.
Not much to grasp onto. I enjoyed
Richard Burton's sweaty performance.
Yeah.
Probably the alcohol-induced sweats, but... I would recommend people to check it out if they're curious.
Certainly, absolutely.
So the second film, Return to Oz.
A lot of people have memories of watching this one as a kid.
And it giving them nightmares. I was not one of those children.
I saw it on TV as a kid, and I didn't like it. The Wizard of Oz was probably the first movie I ever saw, and definitely the first movie I ever loved. So, as a 4 or 5-year-old, I was not that receptive to this film in which... Dorothy is being given electroshock therapy to rid her of the memories of Oz, and then when she goes back to Oz, it's a dilapidated hellscape where the yellow brick road is all fucked up and the Emerald City is destroyed.
As a person who never had any attachment to the original Wizard of Oz, I love Return to Oz. It's does all the stuff that the first one didn't really do that much for me. So,
wow.
Return to Oz. Well, I don't like... we talked about this in Wizard of Oz episode. It doesn't do anything for me.
Oh my god. You don't like the Wizard of Oz?
I like it, but I have no attachment to it.
Okay.
Like, it's not a movie that I'm like, yes. I never watched it when I was a kid, and when I saw it later on, I was like, this is good. Okay. It's imaginative and it's colorful, but I'd rather the miserable version with tons of practical effects.
Okay, that's very interesting, because as I was watching Return to Oz this time, very much hoping to enjoy it, and enjoying much of it.
Yes.
There's lots to like here. These insane, gigantic sets, the some of the practical effects, like the characters. Dorothy meets new friends this time. There's TikTok, the kooky
soldier robot,
metal man, but in particular, there's Jack Pumpkinhead, who is imagine Jack Skellington, but live action and with a pumpkin for his head, and he looks crazy. And even some of the old characters that you know and love, like the Scarecrow, he looks crazy. And
I love how the Tin Man looks. All the characters are designed in a way that it would seemingly be impossible for a human being to be in these costumes. I mean, Jack Pumpkinhead is a human a few times, but most of the time he has these long, spindly arms, and he's like 6 feet tall, so there's nobody in the costume. It's all puppeteers.
Well, there's also the Wheelers, who are the movie's equivalent of the Flying Monkeys. They're these,
terrifying.
They really are terrifying. I mean, they look like... the movie looks more like something like Labyrinth than it looks like The Wizard of Oz.
So, would I have liked Return of Oz if I'd seen it as a kid? Probably not. I think I would have still found it a little dull, and the darkness would have gotten to me. There's a sequence with a princess who takes her head off and has cabinets filled with heads that is straight out of Mario Bava and is very disturbing.
Yeah, that's a very striking scene. I like the evil princess's palace with all the mirrors, crazy costumes.
I think what I would have reacted to was Fairuza Balk as Dorothy. Because her Dorothy is different from Judy Garland, because Judy Garland, even as a kid, or when I saw the movie, it was like someone too old to be playing that role. While Fairuza Balk also looks a little odd. She looks like kids I would know. And I would have responded to her positive attitude throughout. There's a moment where TikTok breaks down and the evil princess grabs Dorothy and brings her upstairs, and TikTok's like, I'm sorry, I didn't wind myself up. And Dorothy, who is seemingly being dragged to her doom, goes, it can't be helped, TikTok, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, she's always positive in the way that she approaches things. And there's no note of falseness to these reactions, to these horrifying things going on around her.
She gives the movie a much needed grounding force. I would just say that when people talk about what they love about this movie, they say, well, it's the darker version of Oz. And I think the original Wizard of Oz, like, had the formula. So, like, it has scenes that are beautiful and colorful, and it has scenes of such joy, like the Munchkin Land, but it's also terrifying at times for a kid, you know?
I think what people react to Return of Oz is maybe not the darkness of it, but the deconstruction of what you know and love and has become common in pop culture. It's like, you have seen all these things. Like, Return of Oz could not exist without the MGM version of Oz.
Yeah.
But now see it desaturated. The Yellow Brick Road is completely destroyed. The director of the film, Walter Murch, actually said he based it on Wisconsin Death Trip, which is a famous collection of photos of the derelict, like, Wisconsin wasteland.
Yeah, that's interesting to me in theory. And
But I love to see it on screen.
in practice, I look at it, it's like, boy, this is really not fun to look at.
But I think the difference between you and me is that you, in your heart, like, you love The Wizard of Oz. And to see that besmirched bugs you. Like, the way that you say that the designs, that they're different, kind of take you aback a little bit. I'm like, oh no, I like these designs better.
You know, it probably does bug me a little bit, but, like, I also genuinely think that the original movie, it's like, there's not much to improve on there. It's like the mix of scary stuff and fun stuff is perfect.
Something that I would have never recognized as a kid, but as an adult, is that Dorothy is very proactive in Return to Oz in a way that she's not in The Wizard of Oz.
Well, sure. I mean, it's her 6 months later,
Yes.
and she's been to Oz before, and so she's taking a more proactive
So
role.
as a kid, it would have probably, like, I would have been like, oh, I like a kid being involved that way. I'm lying. I would never realize that as a kid. I'd be like, woo, look at all these pumpkins. Oh my God, I'm so scared.
I know it's not fair to compare it to the original one, but since that is the movie that it sets itself up for comparison with, like, the original one allows you moments of awe. Like, it allows you to look at the Emerald City or Munchkin Land and be like, wow, look at this. And Return to Oz wants to repel you. Like, it doesn't want you to feel
I
awe.
think that there's awe, but I think that Walter Murch, who directed this film, made a smart decision is that he cannot recreate the feeling of Wizard of Oz. So why even try? Like, in the fabric of this film is the Wizard of Oz structure, meeting new friends, doing stuff with them, but at the same time, it's not trying to recreate what happened before. There's no songs. It's not very colorful. And I think that was a very smart decision. Now, Walter Murch, who was most famous as a sound designer.
And an editor also.
Yeah, who worked on
Godfather, Apocalypse Now.
Star Wars. This was his first and last directorial debut because during shooting, he had a nervous breakdown and was fired. And it wasn't until George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola came and, like, I believe they directed a few scenes and kind of got him back on board that he was able to complete the picture.
I think all the movies that we're talking about on this episode suffered from very heavy studio interference, and all of them probably would have been better if they didn't.
I don't know if Return to Oz suffered from studio interference. I would say the opposite, because Exorcist II, The Heretic, John Boorman was left alone.
Okay.
And that's why the movie is the way that it is that he could do whatever he wanted. And it actually brought an end to that kind of, like, you just come back with the final product era of studio filmmaking before Heaven's Gate finally closed those doors permanently.
Right.
And Return to Oz, I think, is also a articulation of, like, one person's very personal vision. If a studio was more involved in this, they'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, give us the Tin Man, give us the Lion. Don't give us them petrified for 98% of the movie. And I think that even, like, the friends that Dorothy meets in this movie, like Jack Pumpkinhead, is so sad. Like, he thinks that Dorothy is his mother the entire time. And I think that as an adult, I respond to it. As a child, I would have been very disturbed by it. Like, not in a, like, oh, I like this. It would have been like, okay, that means Jack Pumpkinhead doesn't have a mother. There's the implication that he wasn't alive and probably won't be alive, and brings his own mortality into question when he's like, make sure I'm not rotting. I'd like to see the world before I rot away.
You know, it's funny, and one of the reasons why the original Wizard of Oz probably meant so much to me as a kid is because it taps into those primal childhood fears about, you know, being lost. There's the scene in the original Wizard of Oz where she's looking into the Wicked Witch's, like, magic ball, hall and she sees Auntie M like going, Dorothy, Dorothy, where are you? And then she fades into the witch going, Dad, Dorothy, where are you? That's such
that's scary?
That's such a horrifying thing for a kid.
But at least The Wizard of Oz will give you moments of happiness or a song.
Yeah.
While Return of Oz does not have that. Like, the ending would have disturbed me immensely as a child, that Dorothy has to make a choice. I'm speaking of when she has to pick an object, or she'll be turned into, like, teapot or a table. Yeah. And all her friends that's already happened to them, so she's completely alone. That's scary for a kid to make those choices. Also, amazing practical effects. Love that the monster is a giant stop motion guy.
I do love the claymation,
Yeah. And the insane climax where, in a tip to the hat to, I guess the original, or probably its source material, the monster is just destroyed by an egg and melts in a horrifying fashion. That reminded me of, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. So I definitely enjoyed Return to Oz more than I enjoyed the final film we're discussing.
Oh, God.
Jaws 2, which Justin and I just watched.
So Jaws 2 has been on my list to rewatch for a while. I saw it when Jaws came out. And I thought, oh, well, Jaws 2 must have some of the same thrills as Jaws. There was a 3 and a 4. I assume that it was successful in some way to prompt these movies. I read the Jaws 2 log, which was just a sequel to the original very famous Jaws log written by Carl Gottlieb, the screenwriter of the first one. Jaws 2 log, not as good. It was written by just a journalist, and the film still had a lot of problems. Its original director, the man who made Let's Scare Jessica to Death, was fired a few weeks into filming. They got in a TV guy who doesn't really have any notable credits. You would know that when you watch Jaws 2, and they finished it off. And the final movie is a slog.
Boy, 116 minutes. Justin and I just watched it on Netflix. Felt like a week of my life.
A complete misunderstanding of what people liked about the first Jaws.
Well, I would quibble with you a little bit because it replicates the first Jaws rather closely at
with
times.
None of the suspense.
So here's what happens. It's, a year later, 2 years later, I don't know, but it's the same beach community. Roy Scheider is still the sheriff?
The sheriff.
The sheriff, yeah. And there's the mayor is still there, having survived re-election despite not having closed the beaches in the first movie. And wouldn't you know it, there's another shark. Is he the same shark? Maybe he's another shark.
No, I think the first shark blew up. So.
I like to think it's the same shark.
Yeah, that he's just kind of like a werewolf. They didn't kill him the right way, so he just reformulates himself. Yep, and he's on the beach. He's introduced in an opening sequence where he kills 2 divers in the lamest way possible.
And Roy Scheider believes that this was no boating accident.
People don't believe him again. Oh no, the boating accident is when the shark kills 2 people and then someone accidentally blows themselves up.
That was the best scene of the movie.
Should have opened the film, to be honest.
So Roy Scheider goes to talk to the mayor, and the mayor says, listen, buddy, you can't think that everything is a shark attack. He goes to the town council, and they're like, listen, buddy, you can't think everything is a shark attack.
Listen, you're not going to win the lottery twice in a row, will ya?
Later, he's, playing lifeguard at the beach, and he sees what he thinks is a shark. He starts waving his gun around, get out of the water, get out of the water. But no, it was just a fish.
And he gets fired from his position, and then the movie switches to 100 teens who go boating.
So we see the teens near the beginning of the movie, and they're all getting on a boat, and it's a lot of teens. You can't keep track of them all.
No.
But you think, okay, well, this is going to be like a slasher.
Yeah, and that's what the original conception of the film was. It was a bunch of teens went out on a bunch of boats. They got trapped by the shark, and they were all killed one by one. It had a massive body count into like the double digits in its original draft. And it also had a more interesting take on where Amity, the town, would be after Shark Attack. It was all closed up. Nobody wanted to visit it anymore because there had been a shark attack, which would make sense. If a shark had killed a bunch of people on the beach, it probably would be closed for a long time and people would be wary to go back. You can imagine what it could look like because that's what the director of Let's Scare Jessica to Death or his Christmas film Prancer looks like. He has a very particular style and it makes sense. It's a radical departure from what Spielberg did, but I think it would have made an interesting Jaws film. That is not the version that we get. We still have all the teens. Almost none of them get murdered, but there's still 30 of them, and you can't tell any of those white kids apart.
Well, we see them at the beginning, and then, an hour goes by while Roy Scheider is going through the motions.
Yep.
And then finally we see the teens again. And it's like, oh yeah, the teens were in this movie. And then they go out, and a couple of them get killed by the shark. I think we see a bit more of the shark in this one than we see in the first.
Jumping out of the water. It gets scarred right away, so it has a two-face thing going on.
Sometimes you see its jaw chomp like a big mouth Billy Bass.
Yep. That brought me and Will to our feet and applauding.
I enjoyed whenever it looked like a big puppet.
But there's no tension, there's no suspense, there's no danger, there's nothing in this film.
Yeah, well, in the first one, like, the shark is this real existential threat. It's like, okay, this is a huge beach community. If they closed the beach community, there would be very serious repercussions on lots of people's careers. But there's a shark there, and like, the shark could strike at any moment. And also, it's like, the shark, how can you stop this shark? There's no way to stop the shark. Mm-hmm. And there's never any of that sense of either stakes or urgency, or there's never that hopeless feeling in this one.
I mean, they had it. A bunch of kids in a boat attacked by a shark, and you have all the, like, dimensions of the kids on these multiple boats as the shark could pop up at any moment, so it's like a minefield movie, but you don't get any of that. Roy Schneider just drives a boat for the last hour of the film.
And Roy Scheider does not seem like his heart is in it.
No. This was a film that he had a contract with Universal. He had to deliver 2 or 3 more pictures, and Universal said, if you make Jaws 2, we'll end your contract. And it feels like that's the performance that he's giving, the I can't wait to go down to my cottage kind of feel.
You've seen Jaws 3, right?
Yes.
Good?
I mean, more fun than Jaws 2. Way more fun. Way more committed to the kind of thrills that you want from a Jaws movie.
I think Jaws 2 has mostly gone down in history as having the tagline, just when you thought it was safe to go back to the water.
Yes. It has actually a really good poster where it's just like the water and just one fin in the distance, and you don't really see it and the sun is setting. Mm-hmm. So it's the idea of like, oh, everything looks normal, but if you look like a Where's Waldo poster, oh no, there it is. But is this a good sequel?
No.
I mean, it's not a good movie.
No, it's not a good sequel. It just does the same thing as the first one, but less well.
The producers got involved and they said, we want what the first movie had, but we only have a vague understanding of how that was executed.
It does not build on the Roy Scheider character sufficiently.
No, it doesn't. His wife is in the movie, and then she's suddenly not.
The kids are not interesting.
No.
And how does it build on the first movie? As I said, has this sense of fear, this sense of danger, the sense that anything can happen, and this movie doesn't have that. And also, a shark is not that exciting a character.
It's not.
It can only kill people so many ways. Yeah. It's not like Jason, who can kill people lots of ways.
So if it was Jason in the water, then you'd be all in.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, I'm glad that we were here to make the definitive statement that Jaws 2 is not good.
So, sequels.
Yes.
You know what? Hollywood today, it's all sequels and remakes, and when are they going to write an original story?
Well, if they do, we probably won't go see it, because, man, I need to see Spider-Man Far From Home.
Well, there's great movies on streaming all the time now, such as Murder Mystery.
The new Adam Sandler picture, which I was shocked to learn that my partner Emily and Will had watched.
Well, what was I going to do? Not watch it?
And like Neo in the Matrix, I just dodged that bullet.
So, Justin, do we have any letters today?
We do have letters. Our first letter is from Stephen Vag, and it goes, Chuck Norris. Hey, Justin and Will. Apologies if you've covered this already and I've missed it, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the cinematic output of Chuck Norris, in particular his early 80s heyday. As Hong Kong action aficionados, I'd be keen to get your thoughts on this and other white kung fu action stars, e.g. Richard Norton, Michael Dudikoff, JCVD, legitimate action film royalty, or mere pretenders. Love the show, keep up the great work, Steven. P.S. I was listening to the episode on Pauly Shore in the car, and my 4-year-old daughter cracked up every time Will did a Pauly Shore impersonation.
Hey, buddy.
He may have created a new Pauly Shore fan.
Well, I'm all for people watching movies they enjoy.
Yeah, bringing joy to the world.
Regarding Chuck Norris, I don't think he's a favorite of either of ours.
No.
I think that my perception of him is colored very heavily by his odious politics.
Oh, boy.
And also, frankly, the odious politics of his movies.
Yes.
He is a real right-wing action star. I will say, though, that...
He's also an animal warrior, as in, I think the film's called, Animal Warrior, where he morphs into a bear.
He's not as funny as Steven Seagal, either.
No.
He doesn't give you a lot as a presence, and I know that's what's appealing to him for some people.
He's not very expressive. He's a cipher. He's like a bad actor.
Yeah, and like Steven Seagal is weird on screen, and Chuck Norris isn't. I will say though that Chuck Norris has been in some movies that I've enjoyed.
Return of the Dragon.
Well, yeah, Return of the Dragon, but also I think what's that Christmas one? Invasion USA.
Yes,
I think it's very funny.
No one ever talks about the Christmas one, but it does take place during Christmas.
Yeah,
Code of Silence is really good. That's like one of the top tier Chuck Norris action films. I like Delta Force, but that's not because of Chuck Norris. It's more the film that he's in.
Yeah, he's made some all right, 80s action movies. He could do worse.
But I think he's pretty minor. Like, I don't like Missing in Action, but I do love Missing in Action 2.
Braddock.
Yeah, it's a shame. I wish somebody would do some kind of canon film podcast where they could talk about this kind of stuff. Perhaps one day, a fellow named Matthew Kumar and, let's say, Justin DeClue would make a podcast called Loose Cannons, which has 80 episodes and are available on the internet.
If only you didn't burn all your energy on those ones from before Golden and Globus took over the company.
But we did a lot of Chuck Norris films. We did Missing in Action 1, Missing in Action 2.
We did Invasion
USA. So if you want to hear more thoughts on that, check out that episode. And as far as Richard Norton goes, great. Love Richard Norton.
Yeah, I love Richard Norton.
Fought Jackie Chan.
Benny the Jet Urquidez, also very
amazing.
Cool.
Michael Dudikoff, yeah, I like him.
I'll take him, yeah.
JCVD, I like his presence. He's not actually that good a martial artist.
He does a good splits.
He does a great splits, and he's very careful with his kicks. But I heard from a stuntman that JCVD was famous for always making contact. Not on purpose, but he was just a little bit sloppy, which is why his fights are the way that they are. But man, I'll take Time Cop over most films any day of the week. Also, speaking of Peter Hyams, Sudden Death, my favorite Die Hard ripoff.
I really enjoy Sudden Death.
All right, so that's it for letters. You can email us at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And this week on our Patreon, what are we doing, Will?
We are talking about one of the classics of this century. It is David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. Did we like it?
Yeah, I don't know. Will we have to pull out our mystery card out of the DVD to get that skeleton key to understand it?
Yeah, why does the cowboy reappear twice? We answer the question.
Yeah, we should call the episode Mulholland Drive Decoded.
That's right.
And you can listen to that by becoming a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/theimportantcinemaclub. And it's $5 a month. Become a Patreon subscriber. We'd appreciate it. Next week, we're doing a Universal horror director.
But not one that you've heard of.
Oh, wait, we're not doing Todd Browning?
No.
James Whale?
We've already done him.
Oh, God, we've done everyone, haven't we?
And in fact, the Universal horror director is somebody who was only involved in Universal horror a little bit. He's done all sorts of other things. He was an assistant director to Von Sternberg and Chaplin. He directed the Marx Brothers' first movie. He's done many film noir and comedies and this and that. He was an experimental filmmaker, one of the first American experimental filmmakers.
He was one of the first film brats, like a film fan before he actually made it to Hollywood and started making films. He was supposed to direct and got so close to making Frankenstein, and it fell out from under him. There were posters made with his name on it.
He was going to direct it with Bela Lugosi, and his name is Robert Florey. If you haven't heard of him, and you probably haven't, this will be your chance to be acquainted with one of the best B-movie directors of all time.
That's what we're doing next week, and until then, I'm Justin DeClue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. You know, Will, they're putting out all these 4K remastered Blu-rays. Number one, they're not in 4K. Number two, I'm like, do I need another copy of Lucio Fulci's The New York Ripper on Blu-ray?
Well, shucks, I don't think I do, because, I already own it. That's fine, and it looks good, but oh god, now I'm on the internet. I'm on rockshockpop.com, and I'm looking at the screen comparisons of the 2009 Blu-ray with the 2019 Blu-ray, and god, it looks way better now.
Yep.
Well, there goes $50.
I mean, that setup was a little bit of a lie because I've never owned New York Ripper, so it would have probably affected my decision if I picked it up. But it is undeniable that these trashy exploitation films, all of them made by very famous directors, are being remastered to a hilarious extent at this point.
To bilk people like us out of money.
Is it to bilk, though? Because it's not a surface level remastering. It's like a true, this is going to look better than it ever has. And the people that are doing it aren't doing, I don't know if you've seen stills from the original Blu-ray version of The Predator, where they took all the grain out so it looked like they were made of plastic.
Oh, hideous.
Yeah, like this is, the people who are making this are spending the time, they're spending the money to bilk people like us out of money.
Sometimes I'm holding this remastered version of the New York Ripper in my hand. 3-disc, limited edition, new 4K restoration. By the way, this is not buzz marketing for Blue Underground.
They did not send us copies. We paid with our hard-earned money.
We're suckers. And I'm looking at this, and oh my god, look at all the interviews they have on
There's so
here.
many interviews!
I mean, there is more information about the New York Ripper on this disc than there is information about the New York Ripper.
Yeah, they had to travel back in time and find some more.
Made shit up, and it looks like stunningly good. And sometimes I see something like that come out, and it's like, this is like donating to charity. Gotta keep Blue Underground going.
So we're in the golden age, and we've said this for years, of physical media and discovering film and treating films properly. When do we hit that wall where they're like, well, we can't remaster the New York Ripper again. We can't remaster Zombie. There's like a new remaster of Dawn of the Dead, 1978, coming out. Like, all the golden gooses will be cooked. And as we know from these companies, and they talked about it, like, most of the times they work on a nostalgia base. Like, Vinegar Syndrome is not going to release one of their films for $50 and someone's going to buy it. People will buy a Lucio Fulci film. Do you think there'll be, like, 10 years from now, it's like, it's done? Companies kind of like,
Well, there's always a new generation of people, and there are always new...
like pressings, like they're like, it's out of print.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, Blu-ray, we've never really talked about this, but they figured out their market. Like, Vinegar Syndromes, the day they started putting things in slipcases, and people were like, I will spend $30 extra for that slipcase. It was literal dollar signs appeared in their eyes.
Madness.
Vinegar Syndrome have, like, a Scrooge McDuck-style vault of money.
I don't think they do. Do they? How profitable is it to do a restoration on Memories Within Miss Aggie?
They opened a store, and I've read that they're talking about opening other stores.
Oh,
because they're making enough money doing this. Like, they figured out the market. Like, Severin figured it out as well, is that people will spend $70 to $80 for a remastered movies with a plushie from that movie and like a monster mask.
Did you get pieces with the puzzle?
I did not get pieces with the puzzle. That was a Grindhouse release.
Yeah.
I did get the tough ones with a bullet pen, but I thank the stars every day that I am not that kind of collector. Like, I do not need
You don't need the slipcase.
Or the plush Anthropophagus little doll. Even though it's cool and it'd be fun to have, it's not $50 more fun.
Something I've learned from watching the YouTube videos of Cool Duder and Wet Movie is that at Best Buy and at Target and at Walmart, they all get different DVD editions of the movie. So you can get The Force Awakens with a steelbook cover at Walmart, and you can get The Force Awakens
I hate steelbooks.
with a extra making of documentary at Target, and you can get it with a lenticular cover at the other store. So you have to get them all to get them all.
Listen,
that's madness.
Blu-ray distributors, you put extra special features on it, I'll buy it. I'm a sap. You give a lenticular cover, or Scream Factory figured it out with steelbooks. Like, people started, like, they're re-releasing films with steelbooks.
Oh, madness.
Yeah, you don't got me. I don't care. So it's like the illusion of tangibility of like, ooh, I'll learn more. That's my kryptonite. Thankfully, slipcovers that are always ripping on me and I can't get them into their cases is not.
I like when there's a commentary track.
Love when there's a commentary track. There should be no DVD without commentary tracks. And I'll tell you why. Because me and you will do it. Just contact us.
We'll do it. We'll do a commentary track.